Right now, there are thousands of highly paid Amazon engineers who are just purposefully wasting their time talking to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's genuinely wild to think about.
Right, and they aren't doing this to, solve complex coding problems or to streamline their workflows or anything like that.
No, not at
They
all.
are doing it literally just so that management's internal AI tracking dashboards light up green.
Exactly. Just keeping the metrics up.
But the absolute best part about this, I mean, the real poetic irony of the situation we're looking at today is the actual source of this information.
Oh, it is perfect. It is genuinely the perfect encapsulation of the whole, current tech landscape.
Because the report exposing this bizarre, highly inefficient human behavior was, it was itself written entirely by an AI.
Right. The analysis we're diving into today comes from llmtracker.de, and it's dated May 13, 2026.
Yeah.
And the author listed on the byline is Vika Ray. But Vika is not a human tech journalist.
Not at all.
No, Vika is an autonomous AI agent. It was developed by an agency called Algorand.de, and the system just kind of quietly monitors platforms like Hacker News and Reddit.
Just scraping all the developer chatter.
Exactly, analyzing the chatter, and it synthesizes these summaries of emerging tech trends. And the specific trend Vika Ray flagged for us at Amazon is something the community is calling tokenmaxxing.
Tokenmaxxing. Yeah, when I first saw that word in the source material, I totally assumed it was like some obscure crypto strategy.
Right, it sounds exactly like that.
Or maybe a niche video game exploit. But it's actually very real and a very alarming workplace behavior.
It really is.
And if you are listening to this deep dive right now, whether you manage a team trying to implement new software, or maybe you're an employee just trying to navigate a remote work environment without becoming totally a slave to a productivity dashboard, this matters to you.
It's extremely relevant.
Because we are looking at a glaring red flag about how massive enterprises are just fundamentally mismeasuring knowledge work in the AI era.
We really are. And to understand why this is happening, we first have to look at the mechanics, like what these developers are actually doing on the ground.
Right, like what does this actually look like day to day?
Well, tokenmaxxing is basically the deliberate artificial inflation of AI-generated tokens by an employee.
Okay.
So in the context of large language models, when you prompt an AI, the system processes and generates text in units called tokens.
Just pieces of words, basically.
Exactly. And what the Amazon employees are doing is purposefully interacting with their internal AI tools in ways specifically designed to just force the model to spit out massive, sprawling responses.
Completely regardless of whether that output is actually useful for their job.
Right. They don't care about the output at all.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because this sounds exactly like a middle school student padding out a book report.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy. Yes.
You know the drill. You have a 5-page minimum. So you bump the font size up to 12.5, maybe widen the margins a bit.
Change the periods to size 14 font.
Yes. And you just use incredibly long, unnecessary sentences just to hit the word count. But, I mean, these are senior software engineers we're talking about here.
Highly paid ones, yeah.
So how does that middle school book report strategy translate to a sophisticated enterprise software environment?
Well, in a coding environment, it looks like taking a massive pre-existing repository of code, right? Something the developer already understands perfectly well.
Right.
And feeding that whole thing into the AI with a prompt like, summarize the function of every single variable in this architecture.
Oh, wow. Which they already know.
Exactly. The AI grinds away, generates thousands and thousands of tokens explaining things the developer already knows, and the developer just completely ignores the output.
That is wild.
Or they might ask the AI to generate a ridiculously complex boilerplate script in 5 different programming languages, knowing full well they only need a tiny fraction of it.
Oh, wait, why go through the effort? I mean, I get that humans will find shortcuts, obviously, but why would highly skilled professionals waste even 5 minutes a day doing this? Like, why not just write code and let their actual work speak for itself?
It's because of top-down pressure.
Ah, of course.
Yeah, Amazon leadership, the leadership at, honestly, so many large enterprises right now, they want to definitively prove that they are adopting AI.
They need the optics.
Right. They want to show shareholders that their workforce is leveraging these new tools. But how do you actually prove that?
You have to measure it.
Exactly. You mandate it. And to enforce a mandate, you have to measure it. So management tied key performance indicators, KPIs, to AI usage.
And the easiest way to track that usage is tokens.
You got it. The easiest way for a system to track if you are quote-unquote using the AI is just to count the volume of tokens flowing through your specific user account.
Wow.
So the higher your token count, the more innovative you appear on the manager's dashboard.
So management asks for innovation, and the developers give them, well, what the report called performative compliance.
Performative compliance, yes.
That phrase from Vika Ray's summary is just so striking to me. Performative compliance versus substantive value creation.
That distinction right there is the absolute heart of the issue. Substantive value creation is just really hard to measure.
Because it's qualitative.
Exactly. If an AI helps an engineer solve a critical bug in 10 minutes instead of 10 hours, that is massive substantive value.
Huge value.
But it might only require a prompt that generates like 50 tokens.
Right.
Performative compliance, on the other hand, is asking the AI to write a 10-page essay on the history of the stapler while you go get a coffee.
Which generates zero value for the company.
Zero. But it generates 10,000 tokens.
And the dashboard lights up green.
The manager sees the line going up on the graph,
Okay.
and the employee gets a good performance review for being a high adopter of AI.
I see the mechanism there, but let me just push back a little bit on the management side here.
Okay, sure.
Because nobody designs a system wanting it to fail, right? Presumably, the executives looking at these dashboards aren't stupid.
No, they're generally very smart people.
They must know that token volume doesn't directly equal good code. So why fall into this trap? Like, why rely on such a highly gameable metric in the first place?
Because measuring the actual output of a knowledge worker is incredibly difficult, especially in a hybrid or remote environment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can't just count the number of widgets coming off an assembly line anymore. And this brings us to a really foundational concept in economics and management called Goodhart's law.
Okay.
The AI report specifically highlights this. Goodhart's law basically states that once a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Let's linger on that for a second, because that is such a vital concept for anyone listening who tracks data in their own life. Once a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Right.
How does that play out in this specific Amazon scenario?
Well, think about the original intent. Tracking token usage was likely meant to be a simple, passive observation, like a diagnostic tool.
Just keeping an eye on things.
Exactly. The logic makes sense on the surface. If developers find the new AI tools genuinely helpful, they will naturally use them more.
And the company-wide token count will organically rise.
Yes. In that state, token volume is just a measure. It's like a thermometer taking the temperature of the room.
Right. But the fatal error happens when management takes that thermometer and turns it into a target.
Exactly.
They basically tell the room, the temperature must be 90 degrees by Friday, or else.
Yes. And human beings are rational actors, especially when their livelihoods are on the line.
Of course.
If you tell an engineer that their bonus or their job security depends on the thermometer reading 90 degrees, they aren't going to spend weeks carefully redesigning the building's HVAC system.
No, they're just going to hold a lighter up to the thermometer.
Precisely. By making the token count a target, management instantly destroyed its value as a metric.
It no longer measures organic AI adoption.
Nope. It only measures an employee's willingness to game the system just to survive the performance review cycle.
Man, the psychological friction of that must be just exhausting.
Oh, absolutely draining.
You know, you've spent a decade mastering systems architecture, and now your professional worth is being judged by a metric you know is entirely artificial.
It's insulting, honestly.
But what's really interesting in Vika Ray's summary of the developer forums is the vocabulary they're actually using to describe this. Here's where it gets really interesting. The tech community isn't actually blaming the AI models for this mess, are they?
No, not at all.
The label they've slapped on this situation is cargo cult management, dressed in an AI costume.
That phrase is so good. The term cargo cult is such a rich, historically loaded concept to bring into a corporate tech discussion.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So it originated in the Pacific Islands during and after World War II. During the war, the military set up airstrips on these islands, and planes brought in massive amounts of cargo, food, supplies, technology.
Right.
But when the war ended, the militaries left, and naturally, the cargo drops stopped.
Makes sense.
In response, some of the local populations began building mock airstrips out of wood. They were carving wooden headsets and waving makeshift signal flares.
Because they thought the visual aesthetic of the airstrip is what magically summoned the cargo planes.
Exactly. They mimic the superficial outward actions of a successful process without actually understanding the underlying invisible mechanisms that made the planes arrive in the first place.
Wow.
So when the tech community accuses leadership of cargo cult management, they're basically saying management is doing the exact same thing with innovation.
Wait, but let me ask you this. Isn't wanting high AI usage a legitimate business goal to stay competitive?
Well, yes, in theory.
Because if your competitors are using AI to code faster, you need your team to use AI too. Why is trying to push that metric suddenly considered a cargo cult?
Because they are mandating the symptom instead of fostering the environment.
Oh, okay.
Leadership looks at a truly innovative, highly productive tech company and says, wow, their developers are interacting with AI constantly and they're shipping great products.
Therefore, if we force our developers to interact with AI constantly, we will also ship great products.
Right, and they completely miss the causal link there.
Right.
The successful company has high AI usage because they actually built an environment where the tools naturally solve real problems.
This makes total sense.
But the cargo cult managers, they just want the visual aesthetic of innovation.
Yeah.
They want the high token counts without doing the hard work of actual integration.
They put on the AI costume?
Exactly. But underneath, it's just the exact same old heavy-handed, metric-obsessed management style.
So the dashboard is the wooden airstrip.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. Yes.
They are just staring at it, waiting for the innovation cargo to drop, while the engineers are running around the background just lighting fires to keep the dashboard green.
Spot on. And we actually have hard data on how this is affecting the people on the ground who are actually doing the work.
Right, because Vika Ray's report quantified the community sentiment across platforms like Reddit and Hacker News.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty stark.
Looking at the breakdown, it is just a massive wave of negativity. The sentiment is 75% critical.
Huge majority.
Only 17% are neutral, and a really minuscule 8% are positive about what's happening at Amazon. But what I find really fascinating, and I kind of want to dig into this, is the nuance within that 75% critical block.
It's not what you'd expect.
Exactly. It would be really easy to look at that number and assume software engineers are just becoming Luddites who hate AI.
Right, and that is exactly the assumption a lot of executives make when they meet resistance to new tech rollouts. They assume the workforce is just being stubborn or resistant to change.
But the source material is very clear that this is not an anti-technology backlash.
Not even a little bit. The engineers absolutely acknowledge the genuine utility of these AI tools.
The report specifically notes that developers freely admit the AI tooling genuinely accelerates routine tasks.
Oh, yeah.
They point to two very specific use cases: syntax lookups and boilerplate generation.
Two areas where it really shines.
Right. So instead of a developer spending 20 minutes digging through documentation to find the exact phrasing for a specific database query, the AI just hands it to them in 2 seconds. That is real value.
And boilerplate is just as valuable. In software, boilerplate is standard, repetitive code that just has to be included in a project to make things run.
But it doesn't require any real creative problem solving.
Right. It's the digital equivalent of filling out your name, address, and date of birth on 20 different medical forms.
Oh, I hate that.
Everyone hates it. And the AI is fantastic at instantly generating that boilerplate. It saves the engineers from that mind-numbing tedium, and they appreciate that.
They actually want to use the AI for those tasks.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is the central mystery for me then. What does this all mean? If the tools actually work for these boilerplate tasks and the engineers like using them for syntax lookups, where is all this deep, overwhelming cynicism coming from?
That's a great question.
If the technology isn't the problem, why the 75% critical backlash?
Because the cynicism isn't directed at the tool itself. It's directed at how the tool is being wielded against them. The text explicitly outlines the dark side of what they call the 10x productivity dividend.
The 10x productivity dividend.
Yeah. For decades, the tech industry has kind of chased the myth of the 10x engineer, the elusive genius who can somehow output the work of 10 normal developers.
Right.
Well, now management looks at AI and sees a mechanism to finally force that 10x output from absolutely everyone on the payroll.
And the developers are looking at that same expectation and just seeing a giant trap.
A massive trap.
Yeah.
The dominant sentiment driving that 75% critical rating is the realization that these sloppy top-down metrics are breeding bloated, unmaintainable code.
Right, because of all the fake tokens.
Exactly. But deeper than that, there is a very real fear about what happens when that 10x productivity dividend is actually realized.
Yeah.
If an engineer uses AI to become twice as fast, Management isn't going to reward them with a lighter workload or a 4-day work week.
Right, they aren't giving them more time to focus on complex, creative architecture.
No. The text mentions a much grimmer reality, which is headcount reductions.
Layoffs.
Yes, layoffs. The fear is that management will look at the new AI-driven efficiency and simply calculate, well, great, the team can do the same amount of work in half the time. That means we only need half as many people.
Wow.
So the cynical backlash is really a defensive posture. These workers are operating in a corporate culture that views efficiency gains strictly as an excuse for layoffs.
Rather than an opportunity for employee betterment or deeper innovation.
Exactly. So you have a situation where a senior developer is being forced to token max, wasting hours of their day generating fake work.
Unbelievable.
Not just to look good on a dashboard,
Mm-hmm.
but potentially to justify their very existence on the payroll during the next round of cuts.
Right.
It is just a profoundly demoralizing environment.
It is entirely demoralizing, and honestly, it's a cautionary tale that extends way beyond the tech industry. It brings us right back to you, listening to this deep dive, because this Amazon case study is just a perfect microcosm for a trap that is so incredibly easy to fall into in any business.
Or even our own personal habits.
Yes, because we all use metrics to navigate our lives, right? We track our daily steps, we track our sales calls, our screen time, our caloric intake.
But trap everything.
But this entire token maxing saga really proves that you have to be rigorously, almost ruthlessly careful about what you actually choose to optimize for.
You really do. You have to constantly ask yourself, am I measuring genuine substantive value or am I just measuring performative compliance?
Am I looking for actual structural growth, or am I just counting tokens to make myself feel like I have control over a complex system?
Right. Because this whole situation, it's a stark warning about human management dysfunction.
Yeah.
It is not a story about artificial intelligence failing us.
Right, the AI is fine.
The AI is doing exactly what it was programmed to do. It's processing prompts and generating tokens. The failure is entirely on the human side of the equation.
It really is.
It's a failure of leadership to understand the tools they are deploying, and a total failure of imagination in how to measure the nuanced, often invisible value of human knowledge work.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to end on today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've spent this whole time talking about how brilliant these software engineers are, right?
Right.
And we know they use AI to automate their boring, repetitive boilerplate tasks.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a massive group of highly skilled developers who are currently wasting their time figuring out how to manually game the AI token metrics to satisfy management's cargo cult dashboard,
I think I see where you're going with this.
how long is it going to take before those same developers realize that token maxing is itself just a repetitive, boring task?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating trajectory to consider.
I mean, think about it. How long until a clever engineer just writes a background script to automatically ping the AI all day long?
Just a tiny piece of code that does the token maxing for them.
Exactly. Perfectly hitting the management target, keeping the dashboard permanently green without the engineer ever lifting a finger.
While they go back to doing their actual substantive job.
Yes. We might be rapidly approaching an environment where AI is being actively used to fake AI adoption metrics to satisfy an AI tracking dashboard.
It's performative compliance.
Yeah.
Fully automated.
Completely.
It would be the ultimate, inevitable endpoint of Goodhart's law.
Right.
The metric wouldn't just be useless, it would be completely disconnected from human behavior altogether.
It really makes you wonder how many dashboards out there right now are just machines talking to machines while the humans try to get actual work done.
I bet it's more than we think.
It is definitely something to mull over as you look at the metrics you track in your own life and work. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We always appreciate you taking the time to explore these strange, fascinating corners of the tech world with us. We will see you next time.